All right, you've come to the wrong place at the wrong time. That must mean this is the wrong stuff. Guy Denton, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Matt, although I feel like everyone in the country may be in the wrong place at the wrong time after watching some of those speeches last night.
First of all, brother man, Hulkamania is the greatest force in the entire universe. Is Hulkamania running wild on you, Guy Denton?
Well, Trumpamania is running wild. Apparently, he relinquished his ego. He put all of the praise on Trump at the end. Clearly, he's Hogan. Hogan knows he's getting old. He had to pass the torch to a successor, and Trump will take his place in the great pantheon of American cultural heroes. It's poetic in a way.
I was told that if I was taking my vitamins, saying my prayers, and growing these 24-inch pythons, that Hulkamania would run wild. Let's go to the tape and see how it went at the convention.
But what happened last week when they took a shot at my hero and they tried to kill the next president of the United States? Enough was enough, and I said, let Trumpamania run wild, brother. Let Trumpamania rule again. Let Trumpamania make America great again.
What made this great is his commitment to kayfabe. He didn't come out there as Terry, whatever his real name is, with his suit on. He came out there. This wasn't Terry, the guy who plays Hulk Hogan. This was Hulk Hogan. It would be as if Henry Winkler endorsed you and he came out in the leather jacket as Fonzie and never broke character. He just stayed in it. I admire it. It was a hell of a show. I think it's idiocracy, obviously, but what do you make of this?
Well, it's good to know that the Republican RNC has now completed its transformation into WrestleMania, and it's not just CPAC that resembles a WWE pay-per-view. No, the entire time I was watching that last night, I was just waiting for not the Iron Sheik, but one of those old Soviet gimmick wrestlers to run out on behalf of Putin.
Nikolai something or Volkov or something.
Volkov, that's right, or Khrushchev, to run out on behalf of Putin and attack Hogan and start a new feud that could not only revitalize America, but revitalize the wrestling business. Sadly, it didn't happen. But at least, the one thing we know, you're quite right, Matt, the one thing we learned from that is heartening at least, is that Hulk Hogan can still cut a really good promo. There's no denying that.
He is good. I mean, that was exciting. That was fun. It was nostalgic. But you're right. I mean, imagine, we're already in this crazy world. What if Andy Kaufman, this has been a long gimmick, and Andy Kaufman comes out as a Biden voter now, right? And talks about all those stupid people in flyover country in the Midwest. We don't need their votes for Biden. We want the elites. We want the smart people. Like, he could be the perfect villain here to Hogan's Real American.
We can only pray that the next 4 years will bring. If Trump is going to be reelected, but I want the next 4 years to be as funny and cringy as possible, and that sounds like a great way of setting that up. No, I like on a somewhat serious note, though. I mean, the first point you made there about the energy of it, I think, is correct, and I actually think it made for quite a stark contrast to Trump's speech, which I'm sure we'll come to, but nonetheless, which felt to me rambling, and I know he was trying to affect a softer tone, but after a certain point it just became tiresome because he took it to such a degree that he seemed to have no energy at all, and he wouldn't stop babbling in a rather incoherent way. Hogan kept it crisp and he kept it forceful, and you could tell the point he made was very clear.
So before we get to Trump, my old boss Tucker Carlson also spoke. I thought he gave a pretty good speech, and he really, I think, is very effective at normalizing. I don't want to say conspiracy theories, but like sort of setting up the different premises and anyway, we'll go to the tape and talk about it.
When he stood up after being shot in the face, bloodied, and put his hand up, I thought at that moment, that was a transformation. This was no longer a man. Well, I think it was divine intervention. But the effect that it had on Donald Trump, he was no longer just a political party's nominee or a former president or a future president. This was the leader of a nation.
I think very clearly, Tucker is helping to perpetuate this sense that Trump escaped that assassin's bullet by virtue of God, and that it changed Trump, and that this proves he is kind of ordained to be our leader, and some magical stuff mixed in there. What do you think?
Well, I saw that talking point parroted all over the place on social media immediately after it happened, and you can certainly see why it holds sway on people in light of everything we've been talking about in recent weeks, Matt. The whole idea that's been promulgated for a long time by many more of the more jackalish media personalities on the right, but in turn, many of Trump's more strongly socially conservative evangelical voters have brought into that. Divine providence is the animating force behind his campaign, and divine providence has placed him in a position where he can mount a sterling comeback. And by letting Biden have power for 4 years, that only happened simply to illustrate how great Trump is and how wonderful the preceding 4 years were. And now he can return to paradise after suffering through purgatory for the last 4 years. So I think it's pure grifty showmanship on Tucker's part, but he knows exactly what he's doing, and it is shrewd. And the selection of Vance, the vice president, is only a further extension of that kind of grifty, exploitative showmanship on the part of the whole campaign.
Did you notice so many of these delegates or people at the convention were wearing ear bandages, and sort of in solidarity with Trump?
Well, that made me think of wrestling too. Like if Vince McMahon had been injured in a storyline and was coming out the next week with a cast around his leg or a bandage over his face or a fake bruise padded on. Obviously, Trump was injured, and we haven't talked since the assassination attempt, and we're usually flippant about things, but you certainly shouldn't. In no way should we mitigate the significance and the severity of the assassination attempt. But nonetheless, the fact that the MAGA movement and the MAGA forces in the crowd have been able to turn this into a symbol is really a further illustration, when you combine that with Hogan's speech, of simply how much the right has become unable to distinguish kayfabe from reality. And that's going to be the dominant theme of the next 4 years if Trump is reelected.
I get it, though. It's exciting, and you feel like you're a part of something. And if you're wearing that bandage thing, let me tell you how stupid and lame I was. I used to wear a deficit spending awareness ribbon. So Rush Limbaugh came out with this thing. You would take $1 bill, and there was a way that you could fold it, as I remember, to create something that you would put a little safety pin on and wear it. And he called it, this was sort of making fun of, I don't know, all these left-wing or liberal causes had different ribbons. There's a famous Seinfeld episode where Kramer refuses to wear like an AIDS ribbon or something. Anyway, Rush Limbaugh came out with this deficit spending awareness ribbon. And you could make it yourself, and I did, and I wore one because I was totally nerdy. But I do think it illustrates this psychological need to be a part of something and to sort of be in solidarity. So I get it. But it it is. I mean, I think that you could do much worse than study Vince McMahon if you wanted to learn how to certainly motivate Republicans today.
Or if you want to learn how to be a successful showman and public figure, right? I mean, I'm sure that ribbon really brought the ladies running, Matt. I'm sure it did wonders for every facet of your social life.
Explains a lot about the lonely Saturday nights. All right, but enough about young Matt. So we talked about you've alluded to Trump's speech. There was a lot of talk about Trump having a new tone, that this had changed him. This assassination attempt had changed him, and it made him more serious. And he wanted to unify the country. So the Daily Show had a little fun, kind of juxtaposing the I would say credulous media reports that Trump would be a kinder, gentler Trump, and juxtaposing that with the reality.
Claims the moment has now changed him. He said he will adopt a different tone going forward in this campaign.
He seems like a different man.
He actually seems like he's been humbled a little bit.
Democrats, crazy Nancy Pelosi, they're destroying our country.
Is it going to be a kind of kinder, gentler, softer Donald Trump?
I watched the other day on a show called Deface the Nation. Has anyone seen it?
This is really the first time we've tried to see him soften his edges.
The election result, we're never going to let that happen again. They use COVID to cheat.
I imagine that's going to change a person in a way that maybe nothing else can. It might change his tone.
Today, our cities are flooded with illegal aliens. They're taking the jobs from our black population.
Obviously, it's so markedly different from since Saturday night.
I don't even mention it, frankly, because of what happened with the China virus.
It won't be a typical political speech. It'll be about unity and bringing the country together.
We will not have men playing in women's sports. That will end immediately.
I do expect that the tone and tenor of Trump's speech will be different than the campaign speech. I'm not expecting for sharks and lasers and Hannibal Lecter tonight.
The late, great Hannibal Lecter.
So this speech, I did think it did start out being a little calm. He was actually reading from the teleprompter and all that, but then it became a Trump rally. And at the end, after mercifully, it finally ended after over an hour and a half, I think. Chris Wallace had this to say.
I have to say, for me, disappointment in this speech is because the Trump campaign had talked so much about how we were going to see a softer, more reflective Donald Trump. And he had a line early on. He said, I want to be president for all Americans because there's no victory in winning for half of Americans. And I thought, well, we're off to the races here, and this is really going to be a different Donald Trump. As you say, he then went in very reflective, somber, un-Trump-like detail, talking about how God saved him, saved his life, and seemed genuinely reflective. But then, for all of that, it seemed as if he couldn't keep up the act. And so we started hearing about crazy Nancy Pelosi and cheating on elections and talking about Biden. Frankly, it was a long speech. It was a rambling speech. It was a speech by an older man, and I couldn't help but think the people that are going to be happiest tonight are not the people at Trump headquarters, but the people, the Democrats, maybe at Biden headquarters, maybe at the headquarters of other people who think they're going to replace Joe Biden. But, Jake, we have ourselves a presidential campaign again.
All right. So, I mean, Chris Wallace is saying that Trump's speech, maybe it's not over yet. Maybe it's not a fait accompli. Personally, I don't think a convention speech will do that. I think what might do that is if Democrats change nominees and get rid of Joe Biden. But what did you make of that, of the speech and of the analysis from Chris Wallace?
No, I think you're right about the last point. I think the bulk of Wallace's analysis is correct, but I think it also cuts both ways, which he didn't acknowledge there. I mean, Trump, the idea that Trump is going to be a great unifying force in a second term is obviously complete nonsense. But it's not entirely his own fault. I mean, the Democrats obviously aren't going to accept or embrace a second Trump term, because if you really believe that Trump is an existential threat to democracy and a danger to every facet of the American way of life and every cause that progressives have come to passionately believe in over the last particularly over the last decade, then why would you not oppose him on all things and continue to put up a strong fight if he is reelected and attempts to reshape the country in his image, again, as they've been claiming? But also at the same time, Trump can't help himself, and the speech was a profound illustration of that. Initially, yes, I think yes, it was softer and more delicate and considered in tone than we've seen in the past, and that was the right tack to take. But he couldn't sustain it, and in part because he simply rambled and bloviated for such a long time without really saying anything substantial or even making any kind of coherent point. He just sort of pivoted from resentment to resentment and from shout out to shout out without actually tying them together in any sort of satisfying way. I certainly did not like J.D. Vance's speech on the substance of it, but one thing you can't deny is that J.D. Vance is a polished speaker, and his speech did have poise and punchiness and focus to it. And of course, naturally, Trump inhibited himself in the beginning, but he can't resist bringing up the election. He can't resist going back to the old tropes, digging up the past, when really what he should be doing if he wants to win is trying to forget not only what happened 4 years ago with his bogus election fraud narrative on January 6th, but also what happened just mere weeks ago with his conviction for election fraud. He should be mounting. This speech should have been an opportunity for him to promote a fresh start, a new beginning, a return to greatness in some ways. Yes, that's fine, but also a break from a lot of the excess that we've seen from both sides in the last 8 years, and he didn't do that. The speech was clearly demonstrated that another 4 years of Trump are going to look exactly like the first 4 years of Trump, and any patina of change that he might apply is going to wash away very easily.
All right, let's shift over now to Joe Biden. It does feel like the pressure has ratcheted up on him to get out. There was pressure after that bad debate performance. Then it seemed to subside for a little bit, I think, after the assassination attempt on Trump, and now it is back. I think that smart Democrats, including Nancy Pelosi, have figured out they cannot win with him on the ballot, but that they could win. In fact, it's pretty it would be pretty devastating if you're Donald Trump to think for a year that you're going to run against Joe Biden and then have Democrats put in somebody else, less than 4 months to go. Anyway, so Joe Biden in this past week has had some stumbles. Here's one. I'm going to play this for you. You tell me if you think Biden got a raw deal on how this was portrayed.
And so it's all about treating people with dignity. And it's about making sure that, look, I mean, for example, look at the heat I'm getting because I named the Secretary of Defense to a black man. I named Ketanji Brown. I mean, because of the people I've named.
Okay, so putting it in context, Joe Biden speaking to BET, he's talking specifically about African Americans. Some people thought he couldn't remember Lloyd Austin's name, his defense secretary, could not remember his name and called him the black man. Is that fair, or is that taking it out of context?
I mean, I think it's fair as an extension of everything else we've seen in recent weeks. I mean, at best, that clip is uncomfortable, and at worst, that clip is outright pitiful. And when you're thinking about the leader of the free world and someone who is in the process of interviewing for the most important job on earth, you don't really want to feel pity for them. And one thing is true, you don't feel pity for Trump. Trump seems strong, Trump seems committed, Trump seems Trump came close to death, and all it did was rejuvenate him, whereas Biden continues to slide deeper and deeper into this sort of strange Biden has made his bed and he continues to wallow in it. And clearly, despite the private urgings of Democrats, he's not going to leave it. So, again, I don't really have a way of tying up that point other than to say it again.
Okay, but a point you made there when you were talking about kind of comparing and contrasting Trump and Biden, Van Jones from CNN put it in a very pithy this week when he talked about Biden getting COVID. Let's go to that clip.
A bullet couldn't stop Trump. A virus just stopped Biden. You got the nominees of this party getting their butts kissed. Biden's getting his butt kicked by his own party. The Democrats are coming apart. The Republicans are coming together.
Kind of says it all. But I still think if they get rid of Biden, that everything changes. And it could work out. It could be, I think it's a mulligan. And, when you're bringing in somebody, whether it's Kamala or Gretchen Whitmer or whoever, there's a potential that they're not going to be ready for prime time and that they're going to fall on their face. But I think there's also a potential that it's a sprint. It's exciting. Clearly, they're going to be sharper than Biden, whoever it is. And again, Trump and his team have spent the last couple of years assuming that Biden is the opponent. So I think that this is really just shuffles the deck, and who knows what will happen.
No, that's an interesting point. I think, as we talked about last time, replacing Biden with someone else, with someone fresh, isn't going to be, in my estimation, as easy a pill to swallow for people as many in the media and many within the party seem to be assuming it will be. However, I do agree with you that Trump, the ultimate irony of what's happening right now and what's been happening since the debate is that Trump seems like the candidate of order and stability, and Biden seems like the candidate of chaos, which is a complete flip of what we saw in 2020 and what allowed Biden to win in 2020. But that's only happened because of the Democrats' own incompetence and because of Biden's own refusal to step down and refusal to acknowledge that he simply isn't up for the job anymore. So if they could replace him with someone else and could replace him with a much stronger and more authentically unifying and compelling figure, and Trump, that could easily put Trump in a position where he doesn't know how to handle it and he melts down and reverts to his old ways. And it could once again flip the equation in the Democrats' favor and maybe still allow them to win in 2024, because again, the vast majority of people are deeply unenthusiastic about both of the candidates right now, and many of them are simply going to align with Trump purely out of concern that the other nominee isn't even going to make it past the finish line on election night.
So you seem skeptical that Biden will go. Mark Halperin was on Newsmax basically reporting, and we'll see, big if true, but reporting that a deal is in the works, that Biden will be announcing that he's going. That would be huge. Jonathan Martin from Politico, who's a smart observer, was asked, and he seems to believe that it's just a matter of time.
What they're trying to convey to President Biden is not only will you lose, but you will take down Democratic lawmakers with you. We'll lose the Senate. We probably won't take back the House.
Jonathan Martin is Politico's senior political columnist.
At some point, Alex, this is going to penetrate, because no major party nominee in America can afford to have an intra-party coup leading up to his or her convention and expect to have a successful campaign.
So anyway, it seems like it does feel like the pressure's mounting. We'll see what happens, but we are now in a position where it is possible that within a month or two, I mean, time is a flat circle, but within a month or two, you will have had a former president convicted of a felony. You will have had probably the most disastrous political debate any incumbent president's had. You will have had an assassination attempt on a past and possibly future president. You will have had Donald Trump picking his running mate, J.D. Vance, which I think is in normal circumstances, that would have been a huge, huge deal for a variety of reasons. He's 39. He's been in the Senate for a cup of coffee, and he's sort of got these kind of right-wing, post-liberal worldview. And then you could have a president in the 11th hour getting out of the race and being replaced, possibly by his vice president, possibly by some sort of, blitz campaign. And we didn't even get to Kid Rock.
And you've had the return of Hulkamania, Matt, the most significant development at all, lest we forget.
That's right. It is a very strong force. And I wore a t-shirt on purpose because I'm about to rip this mofo off. No, can't do that. But anyway, it is a crazy, crazy year. And obviously people who want to stay abreast of these developments. And I think the deliverable we bring, typically on a Friday, but not always, is to maybe to brief you on what you missed if you weren't paying close attention, and maybe lighten it up a little bit, give you a little humor, or it could be I don't know. Maybe we are just so jaded and cynical that we're detached. But whatever the case, we try to have some yucks, despite the fact is there's some crazy, horrible things happening.
I think the entire country is jaded and cynical at this point, and that's a large part of the problem. But I agree with you, Matt. We laugh because we can't cry. We've been crying for so long that it's like we had botched facelifts. We're simply dry. No more tears can come out. So we have.
You mean like the Matt Gaetz look?
That's over the line, Matt. That's just mean what you said. But yes, exactly.
That was weird. That is weird. He looked a little different in that speech than normal. I don't know what it is.
I wouldn't want to read into that or say anything slanderous about one of our most beloved and consequential Republican politicians, Matt. I don't know where you're going with this.
In fairness to him, I will say makeup and lighting can do weird things. I have done TV where it like looked like I was wearing lipstick. Trust me, I was not wearing lipstick.
I was gonna say,
so anyway,
looked like.
Yeah. Anyway, Guy Denton, before I get you out of here, what have you been watching? You've been working, writing anything? What's going on?
I haven't really been watching. Actually, I was going to ask you the same question because I haven't really been watching much of anything. Have you?
I just watched the first episode of the new season of The Bear, it wasn't great. I'm not gonna lie, it was not great. A lot of flashbacks, a lot of shots of people cooking things, broiling things, baking things. But that's okay because if you've watched the past seasons, some episodes are like transition episodes, some are weird, and then they'll have a great episode. So I'm hoping, let me know in the comments if you've seen the whole thing and I should just give up if you've seen this entire new third season, I think it is. But it's a little concerned, but I'm not ready to pull the plug yet.
How good is the pacing? Because I haven't seen it. I've been told it's really, really good, but I have had other people tell me that it starts very slowly and it also has peaks and valleys in terms of holding your interest. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree. In fact, if the second season, there was an episode called, I think it was called The Seven Fishes, which is like I was ready to like almost commit suicide after watching this episode. It was the most depressing, demoralizing show I've ever seen in my life. And I almost quit watching it. And then the very next episode was almost like a mini movie. It was like an art house film that was uplifting and inspiring and motivational, and they totally redeemed themselves. So I concur. It is, but see, I don't think this is like hit or miss. I think this is part of their plan that they actually have, at least in the first couple of seasons. I can't speak for the one I haven't watched yet, but that there is like a story arc. And part of the journey is you have to go through bad episodes kind of on purpose to get to the promised land.
Much like with the presidential campaign. That's been
Where are we on the story arc? Is there going to be a comeback for old Joe? No, I did hear word that you may be working on a Kiss related project.
Well, I'm working on a few things. Some of them are of actual serious quality and relevance to political life, but one of them that definitely isn't, yes, is I got the chance to interview Kiss's founding lead guitarist recently, Ace Frehley, who is in the process of promoting a new solo record. And to my surprise, I got to talk to him for about an hour, and the real meat of our conversation did not come from discussion of the new album or from discussion of historical Kiss facts, because his memory is so fried that when I asked him a historical question, he either mixed things up or couldn't even really answer it. We primarily talked about his belief in UFOs and in alien abductions, and that the moon is hollow and is an artificial object presumably built by aliens or an ancient civilization, and that aliens with a supercomputer under Antarctica might be
Wait a second.
controlling...
How is it that Ace Frehley was not at the Republican convention with this?
I was wondering... Well, he did go off on an unprompted rant at the very end about transing the kids and the Democrats trying to make children get sex changes and with their reshaping of the education system. So he would have been a great fit.
God knows that Kiss will not stand for any sort of moral degeneracy or anything that might be construed as not conservative Christian family social values,
any sort of gender fluidity from behind their wigs and makeup.
Like wearing makeup or long hair, anything like that. That's certainly out of bounds.
So yes, so the thrust, I believe that it's going to run this weekend, and the thrust of it is about just Ace's sheer kookery, and the kookery of other rock and pop stars that we've observed. The more Ace's innocent kookery on the one hand, but also juxtaposed against some of the more sinister kookery we've seen from other rock stars like Roger Waters and Ice Cube in recent years.
Maybe it's because I'm a Gen Xer, but when you say Ace Frehley, I don't really think of Kiss. I think of Weezer.
Right.
I've got Ace Frehley. Yeah. But anyway, that is very cool. I look forward to reading that. And of course, that brings us to the fact that it is now Cold Gin time again, my friend. As always, you drive us wild, we drive you crazy, and you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. Guy Denton, always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure for you as well, Matt, my fellow Trumpite and Hulkamaniac. I can't wait for next time.
All right, brother man. We'll see you back here in the wrong stuff next week.
If you like what you heard here today, please make sure to follow the show, subscribe to the show, leave a like, review the show wherever you get your podcast, and also please smash that like button, or whatever the people my age are saying. I don't know. I am a Kiss fan after all. But nonetheless, you can also follow us on X at WrongStuffPod, or drop us a note. Fawning praise or scornful disdain, we accept both, at TheWrongStuffPod, all one word, at gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. We're looking forward to next time.